holding on 98b1. 98b1. At the big Mishnah that takes almost takes a complete Amid to do. This, in many ways, is the last of the hard Mishnahs in this Masechta. After this, we get into the last Perek, which is really the Pesach that we all recognize. The Passover that we all recognize, and all the halachas and everything else that are involved in it are with the last 25 dafim of the Gemara. So this is the last one. So, once again, we're dealing with the loss of the Korban Pesach. Okay, we're dealing with the loss of the Korban Pesach. So here's the situation. This is going to be a little different in this Mishnah. There's going to be a few things going on. Each case is nuanced. In one case, we've got a group. They lost their animal. They ask one of the guys, please go find the lost animal. And when you find it, slaughter it for us so that we know for sure we have a Pesach. Which means he becomes a messenger for the whole group. A shliach. Okay? At the same time, while he goes and does his shlichus, what he was asked to do, his messenger, he messengers what he does supposed to do, they get antsy and they'll slaughter a second animal as a Pesach because they're afraid he's not going to find it. So obviously we have the situation again where we're dealing with two different animals that were slaughtered for one set of Pesach. So one of them is good, one of them is no good. And that essentially is the back and forth of this whole long Mishnah. So here we go. The Mishnah says as follows. Chabura, a group, let's call it the BJC group. Okay? The Sharei Tefillah group, She'ovad Pischa. We all got together to join in one fat, big sheep as our Pesach, and we lost our sheep. We are dealing with, and this is extraordinarily important, we're dealing before the slaughter. We're dealing before the slaughter or before Chatzos, before noon of Erev Pesach. Call it what you will. But it's before, let's call it before the slaughter. Because the rule is that before the slaughter, people are allowed to register on the animal, and people are allowed to unregister on the animal. Okay? This is important. But there's one other rule that's going to come up at the end of this Mishnah. That at any given time, once an animal has been set aside to be a Passover offering, has been set aside to be a Pesach offering, at least one person at all times must be registered on the animal. The animal cannot even for 1 second have a moment when it is ownerless. Because at the moment that it is ownerless, it just became hefker. It became completely nobody's. And when it becomes nobody's, it's nobody's Pesach, even if it's only for 1 second. And if that happens, then it becomes possible and it cannot be used as a Korban Pesach. So here we go. Chabura she'obed pischa. A Chabura, the BJC Chabura group, lost their Pesach offering. It wandered off. So let's say there were 10 guys in our group. So 9 of the guys turned to one of the guys and says, okay, listen, we're making you our shaliach. You're being our messenger. Please go seek out our lost Pesach. It wandered off down power line. Go seek it out. And when you find it, go ahead and slaughter it right away for us so we know for sure we're going to have our Pesach. And he does it. Umatza, and he finds the animal at the gas station. Okay, v'shachat, and he slaughters it. Okay, but the guys in the shul, one of the guys got antsy. In the meanwhile, the guys back, the other 9 guys back at the shul, got antsy that the 10th guy was going to be unable to find the animal. So they quickly went and got another animal, and they slaughtered the second animal. So now we got like this. This guy was the shliach. This guy, the one guy that they sent out to look for it and to slaughter it, he was the shliach, the messenger for all of the other guys. Now, what's the rule about a shliach? Shliach shel adam k'maisai. A shliach of a person is like the person themselves. So on the one hand, he did exactly what they were supposed to do. He found the animal and he slaughtered it for the entire group. The group got antsy in the meantime, and they went ahead and got a second one, and they slaughtered a second animal now. So now we've got two animals for this one group. So we got one animal that's no good. So what do we say? So Zok the Mishnah. If his animal, in other words, the original Pesach that he found, that the shliach, that the messenger found, was slaughtered first, he of course eats from this that he slaughtered, and the other 9 guys in the group come and eat from that one as well. Why? Because he slaughtered it first. He was a shaliach for them because they told him, please go seek out and find the lost animal and slaughter it for us. So he did the shlichus. Shliach shel adam k'maisai. A messenger of a person is like the person themselves. So they are still registered on that original Pesach. The fact that they selected a second Pesach because they got nervous doesn't matter. At the end of the day, he did his shlichus and he slaughtered it first. So they all eat from the original Pesach that he found. But if the nervous Nellies shechted their replacement Pesach first, they eat from theirs, in other words, from their replacement Pesach, and he eats from his. Because, by definition, they slaughtered a new animal, a replacement animal for a Pesach. For the Pesach, that is as clear a thing that they took themselves off. They unregistered from the original Pesach, and they newly registered themselves on the new Pesach. But of course, the messenger, the shliach, he went ahead and was still on the original. So he eats from the original, they eat from the new one because they slaughtered the new one first, and there's nothing more clear than slaughtering something first to tell me that we unregistered from the first one and we re-registered on the new one. Now comes another place. But if we do not know which one of them was slaughtered first, we're not sure. Or they were slaughtered at the same time. Now, the fact is, the truth is, there's no such thing as two things being done perfectly simultaneous. But it means is that there's no way to really know for sure which one was done first or second. Now we're on 98b2. He eats from his own. And they do not eat at all. They don't eat from the first one, and they don't eat from the second one. And theirs is taken out to be burnt. Why? Because he was a shliach. Shliach, they told him, please go, seek out our lost animal, and slaughter it for us. So he definitely, and they definitely, were registered on the first Pesach, the lost Pesach. Now the only question is, they got nervous and bought a new animal, and they slaughtered the new animal for a Pesach, the replacement animal. But we're not sure now if the replacement animal was slaughtered first or second. If it was slaughtered first, then they're no longer registered on the first animal. They're registered on the second animal. If the first animal that of the messenger was actually slaughtered first, then they're still registered on the first animal, and they're not at all registered on the replacement animal. So now I don't know which animal they are registered on. I know which animal the messenger is registered on. So he's registered on the original that he found. So he can eat from the original. They, because they don't know which animal they are registered on, cannot eat from either one of them. So obviously the replacement animal, therefore, has to be sent out to be burnt. However, because both animals were slaughtered and they definitely were registered on at least one of them, Either they were still registered on the original if that was slaughtered first, or they were registered on the replacement animal if that was slaughtered first. So regardless, they were clearly registered on one of the Pesachs. So one of these animals that was slaughtered was clearly slaughtered correctly, l'shem, in the name of a Pesach for them. Says the Mishnah, and therefore they're potter, they're exempt from bringing the Pesach Sheni a month later, because one of the animals definitely they were registered on. They just can't eat. They just can't eat because I don't know which animal they were registered on. Because of that doubt, I can't eat. But the reality is, it's not a doubt. It's much as I don't know. It's definitely without a question that we know. Give me 1 second. It's my daughter on the line. Just coming. Simi, I'm in the middle of getting shear. Okay, I got to call you back. No, I didn't. Call mommy. Thank you. Okay. So that's where we're at right now. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Or we're good to go. Everybody understands what we've done so far. Okay. If you got any questions, stop me now, because now we're going to this next part of the Mishnah. Amar lahem. Here's a flip case. You have 10 guys in a group, 10 guys from the BJC group. The animal walks down power line. Okay, so it's missing now. The group doesn't turn to one guy. One guy turns to the group. Amar lahem. One of them goes out on his own and he says, listen guys, I'm going to search for the Pesach. Right? And then he says right away, I'm going to go look for our missing animal. And by the way, imachati, if I take time to get back, if I seem to be delayed, i.e., I'm having trouble finding our animal, Tzu v'shachtu alai. Go, get a replacement animal, and slaughter that animal, and have me in mind on this new animal. So now we've got it flipped. He's not a shaliach. He's not a messenger. On his own, he decides to go look for the missing animal. And in fact, he turns around and makes the group a messenger for him, that if he tarries, if he takes time, they should quickly not mess things up, quickly grab another animal, slaughter it, and have him in mind on this replacement animal for the Pesach. So what happens? Halach, he goes, Umatza b'shachan, and he walks down power line, gets to the gas station, finds the animal, and slaughters it. Okay? The haim lokhu b'shakhu. And they, in the meantime, say, boy, it's taking a long time to get back. Right? So they run and quickly grab another animal and they slaughter it and have in the mind on the replacement. Im shelahem nishchat rishon. So now, if theirs was the first one slaughtered, hey ma'ichem shelahem b'hurachim imahem, they of course eat from theirs because they're still registered on their new replacement, and he eats with them as well, since theirs was slaughtered first. And he made the group a shaliach, that if they should get a replacement and slaughter it and have him in mind. So therefore, since their animal was slaughtered first, he is now registered on their animal. So he eats from them. In shaloi nishchat rishon, if he found his in the gas station first and slaughtered his own first, hu oichem shaloi, by the fact that he slaughtered the original one, he obviously is showing that he's now registered on the one that he slaughtered. The haim oikum shalahem. But they, of course, are no longer registered on the first one. They're registered on the second, because they never made him a shliach to slaughter it. In fact, he made them a shliach to slaughter a replacement animal on behalf of him. So by them slaughtering a replacement, they're already saying, we gave up on the first one. We only have the second one. So they only eat from theirs. But he, having gone on his own volition to look for the lost one, is still with the lost one if he slaughters it. Now, but if I don't know which one of them was slaughtered first, or it looks like they slaughtered them both simultaneously, and we're not sure which one went first, they clearly eat of their own from the replacement animal, because they never made him a shliach, a messenger, vis-a-vis, to look for the first one and to slaughter the first one. They never said anything about the first one. They simply went and quickly got a second one and slaughtered it. So they clicked clearly. Their point was clear. We want to be on the second one. And he goes, and he, the one who went looking for the animal, does not eat with them, and he doesn't eat from his. And his goes to the base. And again, it's the same reason. He was never a messenger he was never made a messenger. He made the group a messenger. So he possibly belongs to the group's shafting of the replacement animal. On the other hand, maybe he got to the one that he found first and slaughtered it first. If he slaughtered that first, that's a proof that he didn't want to be registered on the replacement. He wanted to be registered on the first. Since I don't know which one he's registered on, he can't eat from it. If he can't eat from it, so on his, he goes in and burns it. Nonetheless, he's certainly registered on one of the animals, either the replacement one that they all brought, or the singular one that he found. Since he's clearly registered on at least one of them, right? The din is he's exempt from bringing a second Pesach, because the only problem here is that we do not know which one he is registered on vis-a-vis the eating.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Quick question. I mean, I don't know if the Gemara is going to ask later, but wouldn't it be obvious that whoever is the shaliach, in the first case, they made him a shaliach, one guy. In the second case, one guy makes the group a shaliach. So you're learning the same thing. The outcome is the same. Why do you need both examples?
Okay, so the truth of the matter is you don't. The Gemara is actually not going to ask this question. The Gemara is not going to ask it because you're coming here and you're learning a couple of things. Number one, you could make a group a shliach.
Okay.
That's number one. You're learning a rule about shlichus over here. That you can make a, whoops, what happened here? Whoops, there we go. You can make a group a shliach. That's number one. That is a big deal. Okay, so we're learning the rules of shlichus. Number two, we're learning the strength. See, it's one thing where a group tells one guy to do it. The second case is a much more bigger chiddush. Nobody told him to do anything. He's one of these busybody guys. The guys in the shul say he got lost. Well, go get another one. He on his own says, I'm going to go search for it. And everybody's looking like he's crazy. And he turns around to them, by the way, if I'm late, go ahead and do it. Logically, we would say whatever he does is meaningless. The group as a whole has already made a determination to do a second or replacement animal. And ain't a yotzim in a cloud. When one person is not allowed to separate himself from the whole group. Here we're reminding everybody that it doesn't matter the rule that you're allowed to register and unregister up to the point of the slaughter is inviolate, and it doesn't matter how it comes about. Okay. And that's the chiddush of what's going on here. And we're not even finished yet. Let's go one more. Because the Gemara says, listen, lo yomar, says the Mishnah, lo yomar lohen, v'lo omer loy. If he didn't say anything to them, and they didn't say anything to him, so everybody's working completely independent. There's no shalichus going back anyway. There's no messenger service going back either way. The answer is, ein achroyin zeh lazeh. Nobody's responsible for anybody else. Everybody went in their own way. Whatever each person does, that's what they got. He slaughtered his, he eats from his. They slaughtered theirs, they eat from theirs. And that's that. Okay? In other words, in this case, when everybody's quiet, Charlie, when everybody's quiet, or both animals are eaten. Okay. Everybody's quiet, but they're eaten. And by the way, that's what the Gemara is going to shtel on. Just remember what we just said. When everybody's quiet, we get to do both animals. It's only when you open up your mouth and you make one guy a shliach, or he makes the group a shliach, that we run into a problem of we're not sure which animal people were registered on. Okay. Now that finishes one case. Now we go a little further. Shtei chaburis nisabu pischeim. Two groups whose Pesach offerings become intermingled again before the slaughter. So, for an example, BRS and BJC decide they're going to rent out a big hall and they're going to have their Pesach together. One guy in one corner, one guy in the other corner. And the two animals bang into each other and get mixed up. What happens? This group takes or just picks one. BRS takes one of the sheep. And BJC takes the other sheep. So it's random. They each grab one of the two, not knowing if this was their original or not. Now, so if it's not, we don't know the original. How do I know this is the animal that we're all registered on? Right? We now have a problem. I don't know if I'm registered on it or they're registered on it. So what do? One group guy from BRS, a member from BRS, walks over to the BJC group. And the BJC group, one member walks over to the BRS group. And this is what happens. Okay? And the original members of each group, okay, tell the newcomer. So the BJC group tells the BRS member that walked over, if this Pesach which we presently have, we chose correctly, was the one that we originally registered on, you are now leaving the BRS group and you're now joining the BJC group. You're moving from the circle, you're moving into Boca Grove. Nimnis al Shalelu, and okay, you are registered on ours. But if this Pesach that we actually picked, this animal that we picked is actually the BRS animal, it's from the circle animal, right? Therefore, we are withdrawing from ours. We're withdrawing from the other animal, the BJC animal. The Nimnu al Shalachim, we're registering with the Montoya Circle animal. Let's go one more. V'chein chamesh chaburi shel chamesh chamisha v'shel esa. 5 groups of 5 members or 10 groups of 10 members. The point is, there's an even amount of members in each group. Each group takes from themselves one person from every other group. And then they declare the same thing. If it's ours, you're now leaving yours and you're joining us. And if it's yours, we're leaving ours and joining yours. Okay? Go further. We're now on 98B3. Regarding 2 individuals. Okay? Reuven and Shimon, who came together and their animals got mixed up. So one randomly takes one of them, and Reuven takes one of the animals, and Shimon takes one of the animals. This one goes ahead and goes into the street and grabs a guy off the street and registers a stranger onto his offering. If this guy goes ahead and registers another stranger from the street onto his offerings. And then essentially what they're doing is they're giving these animals, each one is giving these animals as a gift. So Reuven and Shimon, Reuven went and pulled Levi off the street, and Shimon pulled Yehuda off the street. And Reuven essentially gives over the animal like in a present to Levi, and Shimon gives over the animal to Yehuda like a present. And then he says to him, then what happens is Shimon, Reuven, walks over to Yehuda, and Shimon walks over to Levi. Remember, Reuven picked Levi, Shimon picked Yehuda. So we've got Reuven, Levi, Shimon, Yehuda. Now Reuven walks over to Yehuda's animal, Shimon walks over to Levi's animal. Those are the 2 original guys. And they say like this, if this Pesach was originally mine, then you are withdrawn from yours, and I am registered on mine. V'im shalach hu Pesach zeh, this Pesach is yours. Yodei mushvi shalim and yisi al shalach. I am registered on mine and registered on yours. Why do you have to do this? The answer is, if you only were left with Reuven and Shimon, 2 people and that's it, see individuals, so each one took a random animal. If they went and they just did this formula between themselves, if this is mine, you're no longer registered on yours, you're registered on mine. If this is yours, I'm no longer registered on mine, I'm registered on yours. That means momentarily, the animals would have no owner. At the moment that this formalization was happening, and for a second, while this formula was happening, for a second here and a second here, each animal would cease having anybody registered on them until the new guy got registered back on them. How do you avoid this problem? And what do we say? That an animal that has been set aside to be a Pesach must always have somebody registered on it. If it even has 1 minute where it's not registered, and 1 second that nobody is registered on it, it becomes puzzle, and that's it, it's off. How to avoid the problem? You have to bring in other people. This is the reason why. They go ahead and get these strangers and they bring them in. So now says the Gemara. That's what we're talking about. Tanu Rabbana. Charlie, can you hear me? So
yes,
Charlie, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Oh, good. Okay, Jerry, can you hear me? Because you got lost there a second. Jerry, you're okay? I'm assuming, Jerry, you're okay.
I'm good.
You're good. Okay. Here we go. Says the Gemara, 98b3. Tanu Rabbanan, Amar lehen amrulai. If he said to them and they said to him, he told them if he gets late, they should go out and get a replacement. And they should get a replacement. Give me a second. What's going on with my computer? Darn it. Can you, okay, there I'm hopefully I'm back. Can you guys see me? I'm back.
You're back.
Good. I don't know what's going on with my computer. You can't see me?
No, but you're back.
Hold on, I'm trying to see. Why can't you see me? Here we go. Yeah, I'm back. There you go. Bye, he. There you go. So, this is the case where he told them if he delays, they should go slaughter a replacement animal for him. And they told him that he should attempt to locate the animal at the original Pesach and slaughter it for them. So in other words, this Baraisa says they both made each other shalichim. He says to the group, I'm making you group my shliach that if I'm late, slaughter a replacement for me and have me in mind. They, the group, say to him, you go look for our original and slaughter it and have us in mind. Oichel min harishin, they all eat from the animal that's slaughtered first, and the other one is taken out to burn. But if he didn't say anything to them and they didn't say anything to him, they're not responsible one for another, and each one eats from his own Pesach. He eats from the Pesach that he slaughtered, and they eat from the Pesach that they slaughtered. So none of the animals have to be burnt. They're all good to go. Says the Gemara, Mikan Amru Chachamim, the great lesson. Yofa shtika lechachamim. Shtika, silence, is fitting for the wise. Kavachayma letipshim, and certainly for the fools. Shenema avo machnish chacham yechoshev yechacham yechoshev. A fool, when he is silent, is considered wise. Siyag lachachma shtika. A guard for wisdom is silence. Be quiet. When in doubt, shut up. So in other words, this is a great story of my Rebbe, Rapam Zecher Lebracha. Used to give a shiur on nibble peh, on speaking bad words, speaking poorly. A Jew shouldn't speak; should have a clean mouth. So one year he added, "Whatchamacallit," and he said in Yiddish, "Visat avartis das." What kind of word is whatchamacallit? So after shiur, the guys went over to him and said, "Rebbe, you know whatchamacallit. You're talking and you forget the words. You go, whatchamacallit." He turned around and in Yiddish said, "I'm a veis nishvos zogin, zogis nicht." If you don't know what to say, don't say it. And that's this Gemara. If you don't know what to say, don't say it. You didn't have to make messengers. Just go do your thing. Go do your thing, and guess what? Both animals would go. We wouldn't have to waste one animal and have to burn it. One more Gemara. By the way, we're on 99A1. Two individuals whose Pesach offerings became intermingled. They register strangers with them. And again, we said Reuven and Shimon register Levi and Yehuda. Then they switch it over. They essentially give the animals over to Levi and Yehuda. Then Reuven walks over to Yehuda and Shimon walks over to Levi. And like we said, the whole idea being that the animal should never have a second where it's unregistered. Says the Gemara, Levi Masnis the like Rabbi Yehuda. Let us say that our Mishnah is not going like Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, because we learned the im yimat abayis miyos misay, if the household is too small for the land. So this we learned. The Pashup shot was so register more people. If you don't have enough people to eat up the lamb, register more people. But Rabbi Yehuda says, Malave shemesatim v'holchim. This teaches that those who are registered are allowed to withdraw from the Pesach and diminish the number of people registered on it. Bilvad, except that one of the original group is still registered on it. Tibur Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says at all times, at least one person from the original group that was registered on it must remain on it. Rabbi Yosi says, doesn't have to be the original group. Provided that they do not leave the Pesach as is without any registrants at all. As long as there's one person registered on it, that's fine. It doesn't have to be from the original group. So now our Mishnah clearly seems to be like Rabbi Yosi. Because what are we saying? There was Reuven and Shimon, their animals got intermingled, so they bring Levi and Yehuda, they give over the animals to Levi and Yehuda as a present. Right? So Levi and Yehuda were not part of the original group. So it looks like it's only Rabbi Yosi, because that as long as you have one person registered on it, even if it's not from the original group, we're good to go. We could say it even goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. Kichiv on the Rabbi Yehuda. Ain't shaychtiness a Pesach ala yachid. Rabbi Yehuda holds you never slaughter a Pesach on one from a single individual. He holds that a Pesach must always have more than one person registered on it. It must always have two people registered on it. Right? Always must have two people registered on it. That means from the beginning, this Pesach stands to always have another person registered on it besides the original Reuven. And therefore the newcomer, the second guy, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is considered to have automatically been part of the original group, because he happens to hold that you never slaughter a Pesach with less than two people registered on it. In fact, if you read our Mishnah carefully, it would agree with this understanding of Rabbi Yehuda, that it's Rabbi Yehuda. Diktani, because we learned, and now we're on 99A2, regarding 5 groups of 5 members each. Shel chamisha in. If each group is exactly even, 5 and 5, but if 4 of the groups had 5 members and one group only had 4 members, so that last group of the 4 members does not have enough to share, to distribute throughout the 5 animals that got commingled, right? They have no solution. Lav mishum it's because the Pesach belonging to the 4-member group will be left without one of the original members registered on it. Right? That's a problem. I bring a person from the outside, the Torah says, we're going like Rabbi Yehuda, who says it has to always be that at least one member of the original group is still registered on the animal. Shema Mina, from here that you always require at least one person of the original group to remain on the Harden aloch misha yitome v'sukkah Pesach Sheni. Harden misha yitome v'sukkah Pesach Sheni. We should turn to you, misha yitome, and Pesach Sheni is concluded. We should return to you, misha yitome, and Pesach Sheni is concluded. We should turn to you, misha yitome, and Pesach Sheni is concluded. In fact, we have just finished Mesechtas Pesach. If you remember way back, we talked about this. In the olden times, this Masechta was split into Pesach 1 and Pesach 2. The name of our Masechta is Pesachim, 2 Pesachs, not Masechtas Pesach, Masechtas Pesachim. Well, we just finished the first real Masechta, which is the Masechta of Pesach Sheni and Tomei and all that. And now, Baruch Hashem, we're going, turn the page, to 99b1, we are going into our Pesach. We're going into our Pesach. Okay, so now I just want to talk about one thing over here. Everybody take a look. The name of this Masechta is Arvei Pesachim. The Erev of Pesachim. Okay, of Pesachs. Everybody look at the first words in the Mishnah. The actual words in the Mishnah are Erev Pesachim, not Arvei Pesachim. So Tosfos right away jumps, if you look at the Tosfos in the right-hand corner, Igar Sinon Arvei Nicha. If you say Arvei Pesachim, it's okay. Igar Sinon Erev, it's also okay, because what Hachi Kama, this is what it's coming to say, Erev Sheshoichtim Boi Pesachim. On the Erev, on the eve of the Yontif, we slaughter a lot of Pesachim. On the day that we slaughter all the millions of Pesachim that we slaughter. Inami, Erev Pesach, Rishon V'Sheni. We're talking about Rishon V'Sheni. But there's one other thing I want everybody to take a look. The left, look at the Hebrew side or the Aramaic side, the left column. You'll notice something very strange. There's a top portion that looks like Rashi, and then right in the middle it says Pirish Rabbeinu Shmuel Talmud Rashi, otherwise known as the Rashbam, which happened to have been not just a Talmud of Rashi, but in fact a grandson of Rashi, the great Rashbam. This is one of the places in Shas where we're not sure if the Rashi that we have is really Rashi. Or it was, remember, there were 3 versions of Rashi. There's Pirish HaKuntris, the Kuntris. Those were the writings that came out of the yeshiva of Rabbeinu Gershom, and Rashi, as a very young man, brought all of those together and created the Kuntris. Tosfos calls it sometimes Pirish HaKuntris. Sometimes there's Pirish Rashi, and then there's Pirish Rashi, which is a more clarified, a later version. And then there's a third lashon that's used, which I don't remember at the moment. Here in this thing, and this is not the only place in Shas where you will find. In fact, there is a place in Shas where it actually writes, here Rashi passed away, literally. And so other people take over. So the Rashbam in this case, you will notice something else, the beauty of it. Rashi, as always, is short and sweet. The Rashbam is always much longer. So our dafim are going to get much smaller for a good chunk of this parak. Okay, we're going to be able to move along a lot quicker. Okay, in some ways. So I just thought to point this out. We're going to go back and forth to each of these. So now here we go. Says the Mishnah. Okay, Arvei Pesachim, or Erev Pesach, on the eve of Pesach, Samuch lemincha, near mincha, Loi oichel adam, a person shall not eat ad shitchatecha, until it gets dark. Until it gets dark. Okay? Until Tseisach Elkomim, the stars come out. What does this all mean? Zok, let's go to the Rashbam. Okay? That's the Rashbam. Pirish on the side. The Rashbam. Some Arvei Pesach Samuch lemincha, Mincha ketana koidim lemincha ma'at chatzi shah b'tchila shah asiris. Mincha, so now let me explain this. As you all know, there are two kinds of minchas. When we can daven mincha, there's mincha gedola and mincha ketana. Let the day, for our purposes, is split into an even 12 hours. Midday is hour 6. Mincha gedola, which is the earliest that you were allowed to slaughter the Tomid Shalbena Abayim, the Tomid of the afternoon in the Beis Hamikdash, was at 6.5 hours. And that is the earliest that one is allowed to go daven mincha. The second mincha, which is what we stick to, is mincha ketana. That is 9.5 hours, 3.5 hours after midday, after chatzos or midday of the day. So what the Mishnah here is saying, on Erev Pesach, close to mincha ketana, close to 9.5 hours, i.e., when it hits the 9th hour in the afternoon, lo yochel adam, a person shall not sit down to have a meal. That means you can eat fruit, or you can eat other things. The article at the bottom goes to the whole machlekes rishonim of exactly what people feel you could eat and can't eat. But we all say you can eat fruit and all that. What you're not allowed to eat is egg matzahs. You're of course not allowed to eat lechem oini. You're not allowed to eat on Erev Pesach matzah. But there's an argument whether you're allowed to eat from the matzah that you're not allowed to use at the seder, i.e. matzah ashira, rich man's matzah, i.e. matzah made out of fruit juice and other things like that. But the simple portion is we say you're allowed to eat fruits. That's what you're allowed to have shahakol, you're allowed to have yogurts, you're allowed to have fruits, but you're not allowed to sit down to have a meal from when? From hour number 9. From the 9th hour in the afternoon on until the dark. And the reason for this is simple. So that you should have an appetite to eat the night of Pesach. Right? And as we're going to see, this is the question is going to come up. Why is it only you talking about Erev Pesach for this halacha? Isn't this the halacha on Erev Shabbos? Erev Shabbos after Chatzos, we're not allowed to start a meal. Erev Yom Tov, you're not allowed to start a meal. Because you're supposed to get the Shabbos to be full. And that's going to come up to what happened this year on Purim. When did you have to start your meal on Purim? It's going to come in. It's all going to be built in the next couple of dafim. Literally what we just went through today, on Friday. Anyway, so the Gemara, but that's for the Gemara. Right now the Mishnah simply says, Erev Pesachim Samach Lemincha, Erev Pesach near Mincha at 9 hours into the day. So let's call it, for our purposes, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. From 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Lo Yeyochel Adam, a person should not sit down to have a meal. If you look at the Rashbam, he says, Lo Yeyochel Adam Kedei Sheyochel Matzah Shel Mitzvah. So therefore one should eat the matzah of the mitzvah of the Erev Teichel Matzahs. In the evening you should eat matzahs with a great appetite, mishum hidur mitzvah, because that's the right way to do a mitzvah. Okay, until it gets dark. And now the Mishnah goes further. While we're on the subject of eating, afilu ani shebi Yisrael, even a poor person in Klal Yisrael, la yochel ad sheyosef, is not allowed to eat. And now we're talking about the night, the Seder night, until he reclines. Says the Rashbam, the first wide line in the Rashbam. Ba'arvei Pesachim ad sheyosef, from Erev Pesach in the afternoon until he leans, kederech b'nei chorin, like the way of free people, b'mita ve'ala shulchan zeicha lecheres, in order to remember freedom. You have to remember they came out of the essentially what would be the Ottoman, which eventually would become the Ottoman Empire, the Arabic lands. And how did they sit? They sat on low sitting couches. How did they sit? Leaning. Leaning is a sign of freedom. Today, of course, it is not. So today, that is going to be a question later on, whether today we have to lean or not have to lean. But the answer is, of course, we do have to lean, if not the least, because when the children ask the question at Manishtana, how come tonight we lean, right? And don't, so you better be leaning. Make a big deal about the leaning. So it says, even a poor person in Klal Yisrael, meaning a person that is dependent, a person who is dependent, a person who is dependent on other people to survive, does not see himself as a free person. Says the mission, you are a free person. And tonight you need to celebrate the fact that you are a free person. Your situation is such that you must rely on people. But that does not take away from your fundamental freedom as a human being. And this is front and center of the first Mishnah talking about our night. We should never forget, and we are now within 30 days of Pesach. It is wonderful that we're learning this parak during the 30 days, because this will give us everything, and we're going to finish it before Pesach. But the point underlying everything we do is freedom, freedom, freedom. Of course, the idea of freedom here is religious freedom. Okay? It's different than the secular version of how they try to term Pesach. The reality is no different to what he called, Charlie, I got the text.
Sorry,
I got
guys.
the text. Okay, you got it. But do yourself a favor, just go to the bottom, just get to do this. Okay, this is very important about the freedom. Let's go a little further here. I feel what we say, and they, that means the administrators of the charity, those who give out, the administrators who help the guys out with a handout to give them money to purchase, must give him no less than 4 cups of wine. Okay, you have to give him the 4 cups of wine. As Rashi says, they're connected the Arba L'Shonis Shel Geula, the 4 languages of Geula, Omer B'Golus Mitzrayim, V'Itzeisi, V'Itzalti, V'Ga'alti, V'Lokachti. All the 4 expressions of freedom. So we have 1 wine and 1 cup of wine against them all, even though these are not biblical in nature. In Kozeh, you still have to give the ani, the poor person, enough for that. And this is so, if the person is so poor, we're now on 99b2. If the person is so poor, the person is so poor that he has to be supported not simply from the fund, but from the actual charity platter. He has to go to the soup kitchen. He's an ani sheba ani, he's a poor of the poor. And he has to go to the soup kitchen. You, the soup kitchen, must make sure that he has enough for 4 kaises. But as Rashi and the Rashbam explain, if not, if they can't, and look at the Rashbam, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines from the bottom. Im loy nostanu gabi tzedakah. If the gabi tzedakah, if the gaboyim of the charity do not give him enough for the 4 kaises, for the 4 cups of wine, yimkar es malbusha, the poor man has to sell his clothes, or he has to borrow, or yisacher, or he has to rent himself out, b'shvil yayin la'arba kaises, for the wine of the arba kaises. Because the idea of freedom is for everybody, and he is no different than anybody else. Even if he has to go to the nth degrees to get to the 4 kaises, it's absolutely imperative that he does so. You know what? We're going to stop here because I'm going to repeat the Mishnah tomorrow. We're going to catch up because tomorrow's daf is not